Karate friends, welcome to Classics in Color, your weekly dive into some of the ancient world's wackiest facts. I'm Mark Graves, a full-time Latin teacher. Let's get started. I remember being a little kid and having a distinct moment where I realized that there were human beings walking around on this planet, thinking and talking and interacting and going about their entire lives not in English, but instead in all of these other languages. And I was just so impressed and amazed by this. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. But it took me a while to understand that other languages like Spanish and Chinese and all those were not just essentially codes for English. So when I was a kid, I was very nerdy, and lots of Christmases I got these little code books that taught you how to put letters into Morse code, that kind of thing. So in my head, I just assumed that when I went to learn Spanish, all I would have to do was learn the Spanish words for all the English words. That there was just a 1-to-1 ratio for everything. If there was an English word, there was a Spanish word for it. And if there was a Spanish word, there was one English word for it. You can just go back and forth very cleanly, almost like math. And that is not how language works. Now the way I think about language is that each language is its own organism. And inside of that organism, there's a whole world of thousands of different little microorganisms interacting with each other in all kinds of weird, complicated ways, and that those systems have been evolving for God knows how long, longer than humans can even remember. We've been dealing with language. So it's just been around for forever, and it's built up all kinds of weird, wacky, and individual ways of doing things, some of which are incredibly impressive, and some of them are just strange. And so now that's how I think each language is. It's like this animal, and just like you could never translate a wombat into a peacock, there's no one-to-one really there. You can never truly translate one language into another. We do anyway, but that's one of the beauties of actually learning another language, is that you can interact with people and literature in that language in a way and at a level that you never really can quite get at when you're interacting with a translation. So when you teach a language, and I teach Latin, it's hard enough to get students to memorize these massive lists of vocabulary, but what often is even more difficult than that is to get them to wrap their brains around all the little weird and idiosyncratic things that Latin does that are completely against all of the assumptions that they have about how language works. So usually I'll start off by giving them some English sentences and pointing out, look, see how every sentence does it this way, right? English has these rules about how we have to do things, and you've never realized this, never thought about it in your entire life. You talk to people every day and you never think about it once, but you do it. You follow these rules without even knowing it. And once we get an idea for the rules in English, then we look at a Latin sentence and we can compare and contrast. So I thought that might be fun for us to do today. And we're going to be looking specifically at how word order works in English versus Latin. Word order is absolutely critical when it comes to the English language. You cannot do anything without following a whole bunch of rules when it comes to word order, many of which you probably have never thought of if you were born and raised speaking English. So let's look at a couple of English sentences. I've got two here. I've got a zombie bit Mark and Mark bit a zombie. So in those two sentences, we have not changed anything, right? It's the exact same words. We haven't changed anything about the words. The words are exactly the same. All we did was we moved some stuff around. That's it. But we have a completely different meaning. In sentence A, something completely different is happening than in sentence B. So typical English word order is this way: subject, verb, object. So a subject is the thing doing stuff, right? So if I kick a ball, if I dance, if I sleep, if I bake a cake, I am the subject of all those sentences. And then the verb is the doing part. So that's sleeping, eating, dancing, laughing, crying, all those things. Those are our verbs. And then the object is the thing that the action is happening to. So if I give a present, if I hit a ball, if I eat a cake, then present, ball, and cake would be the objects. So in English, 9 times out of 10, there's a very few exceptions. What you're going to do is you're going to have your subject first, verb second, object third. And obviously you can get longer, complicated sentences with different things put in between, but you're still going to follow that same basic order. Latin word order is a little more flexible, but 60 to 70-ish% of the time, it does have a standard order that it uses, but it's different from English. So Latin typical word order goes subject, but then object, and we have the verb at the very end. So if we went back to that zombie sentence, it would be something like a zombie Mark bit. which sounds kind of Yoda-ish, right? So when my students go to translate and do their homework, one of two things will happen. The first is that they'll just get an error message in their brain, right? They'll just like kind of panic and they won't know where to start. You'll get kind of a beach ball of death happening on their face. It's kind of entertaining to watch, honestly. But they'll just kind of freeze because their brain doesn't know where to start processing. So I have to remind them, don't panic, take a breath, one word at a time. You'll get it faster than you think that you will. And then two, the other thing they do is they'll just translate, but they'll keep it in a Latin word order. So they won't unscramble it and put it back into good English word order. So they'll give me something that sounds very Yoda-ish or sometimes caveman-ish. And I have to insist that, no, you have to take that one more step to make the English something that actually sounds like English. Like I said, Latin is much more flexible when it comes to word order, and that is possible because it's what's technically called an inflected language. There are lots and lots of inflected languages around the world, but Latin is the one that we happen to be talking about today. And what that means is that instead of word order, letting you know where the subject is, where the object is, all of the words in a Latin sense are going to have a little tag, a little suffix that you're going to tag onto the end there that'll let you know, hey, I'm the subject, or hey, I'm the verb, or hey, for all of the other complicated things that we could have going on in a sentence. So in my Latin classes, we spend a lot of time memorizing all of these little tags that let you know what all the different words in the sentence are doing. So it's labor intensive, but that frees Latin up. So now I can put the words anywhere it wants to in the sentence, and Latin will particularly go crazy when it comes to poetry, having fun, painting all of these pictures and playing all of these word games with the word order. So if I gave you an English sentence like, a purple elephant danced down the street in new shoes, that would be adorable. But also, if I moved the word purple to be anywhere else in the sentence, right? If I moved it away from elephant, we would completely change the meaning, right? If I put it, especially if I put it over next to shoes, you would think, understandably, correctly, that I was talking about purple shoes and not about a purple elephant. So the word purple, in order for us to know, both of us to understand that I'm talking about a purple elephant, we have to put the word purple next to elephant. They have to be right next to each other in order for that to work. 99% of time in English, we have to rely on word order to tell that those things are going together. Latin poetry could care less. Now, I'm going to give you a poem from Catullus, and I'm going to highlight or bold or something the nouns and the adjectives, so hopefully you can see that they're going together, but they're also separate. So in every single line, they're separated by at least one word, and in some cases, multiple words. Sometimes they're at the opposite ends of the line, but they are still technically going together. So for example, in that last line, I've got mutam and I've got kinerem, opposite ends of the line, but they're going together. So mutam means mute or silent, and kinerem means ash, and together they just mean the silent ash or the mute ash, right? He's attending a funeral and he's addressing the silent ash of his dead brother. So if I translate that whole sentence and I use the Latin word order, I'm not going to unscramble it yet, it would mean something like, and silent in vain I address the ash. Now, if we flip it around and we put it in good English order, that's, and in vain I address the silent ash. So I've been giving this speech, this talk to my students for years now, over and over and over, trying to help them understand this. And I was commuting to work the other day, and this song randomly came up on my playlist. It's Your Song by Elton John. And all of a sudden I just stop and I notice and I think, oh my God, English is doing the Latin thing that I said that it never did. But English totally can, because English is a crazy flexible language. So I'm going to put the lyrics up here and I'll read through them real quick. So excuse me forgetting, but these things I do. You see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, yours are the sweetest eyes I've ever seen. So all through of that poem, we get green, we get blue, we get yours. We do not get eyes until the very end. The end of that stanza is where the eyes finally come in. And that doesn't bother your English brain at all. You are totally cool. You're listening to the sentence, you're jiving. You are not like, what is he talking about? What could possibly be green in a love song? You know exactly what he's talking about. Your English brain is fine and it waits. And when it gets that eyes, it just fits into the spot that's already waiting for it. So your English brain processes this just fine. So when you look at Latin poetry and you have that panic moment of what the hell is going on here, you're right, because it's a new language, but also it's not that new and it's not that different. Anyways, human brains are amazing, languages are amazing, and thank you so much for checking out this video. Special thank you as always to subscribers and to Patreon members, and I hope to see all of you again next week. Χαίρετε.